Welcome back to the Elevate Your Best podcast. My name is Michael Danklefs. Today, we're going to be talking about vision for the future. We've talked several times about this idea, so we thought we'd do a deeper dive into this idea of vision. What is it about? I know I had the opportunity to talk with the Elevation Mindset Summit about vision in January of 2021 and ways we can use that and why it's important. And this is an opportunity for Bruno and I to have this deeper conversation. And I guess for you, Bruno, if you were to look back in your life 10 years ago, how were you approaching life? Was it structured with a destination that you had to go, or were you wandering around and tripping in the dark?
Michael, 10 years ago, I was completely lost in life. I was completely drifting. I was reacting to things, and it was not a nice journey. It was a terrible experience. I am 32 years of age now, and I had 22, and I was 1 year away, like 1 year before of the worst moment of my life ever. And terrible things would usually happen to me. I was identifying with a very harmful frequency. I was in a relationship at the time, and I remember one day where I called this girl in the middle of the afternoon. I was at work, and when she picked up the phone, she was like, "What happened to you?" And I was like, "How do you know something happened?" And she was like, "When you call me this time, it's something that happened. And I know that many things happened to you." Like, she was like, it's because something bad happened to you, something like that. She knew that I was in this frequency, and it was very sad, very bad. And I was lost in my journey, didn't know what to do, was not satisfied with my life, and had no idea how to change things. And it was terrible.
What I hear in that is a lack of vision. And vision
I
is,
was without a vision and without a purpose.
and both of these are really key components and can be similar, but they certainly drive us in a different way. Vision is, where do we want to be? And what's a destination? And our purpose is, why do we want to go there? Or why are we uniquely qualified to get there? Depending on how you look at it. So I certainly heard how unfulfilled you were in that moment too, that you were more victim focused. And for me, if I were to look at my life 10 years ago, I similarly was in that space of reacting. I was in a relationship that I thought was the best thing ever, and was about the time that many of the parts of my life were really starting to crumble, because I was in that reactionary space. Is that looking to get through the day. I was looking to get through the moment sometimes, and in the process making some really bad decisions. Because whenever you're making decisions when the wall is right here, you have no idea what's on the other side or what's to the left or the right, because your vision is clouded. Literally, same thing happens figuratively. Sometimes you need to take a step back to look at the bigger picture so you can make a better decision. And that's why this is so important. Is like the idea of, if you're driving a car in the fog, yes, you can still get to where you need to go 1 foot at a time. But do you know where the best turns are to go in order to get to where you need to be? I think many of us in our lives get to a space where we are driving around the fog, and we think we can see no problem. So we put the pedal to the floor and are just going as fast as we can, with no idea what's coming up next. No idea why we're going there, or if we're going to even, in some ways, survive that next test, that next challenge, that next problem, because we don't know why we're doing it. We don't know where we're going on the other side. The other analogy that I like to use as well is the idea of splitting wood. So if you put down a piece of wood and you've got an axe, and if you're aiming for the top, that's you're reacting. You're just aiming for that little piece at the top. Or same thing is true in Taekwondo when you're breaking boards, is that I'm actually aiming to hit the board That's as far as I'm going to get. Vision is actually knowing that I want to get to the other side. I want to get to the other side of the board. I want to get to the bottom of that piece of wood. I actually want to have a destination where I'm going to go through. And allows us to do follow through. So whatever that problem is at the top edge of that piece of wood or the front face of that board is, we know we're going to get to the other side. So we actually put the energy and effort in order to get there.
About this thing of living life without a purpose, we talk about the victim state, states of consciousness. And a person that is not aware of those things, that do not understand this, they might feel like it makes not much sense for them. It's we might be looking like we are talking obvious things that everybody knows and there is no use for their lives. But the thing is, why do we call the victim states and we relate it to a lower level of consciousness? Because in our lives, many people are living, drifting without a purpose, like they are in a road, in the fog, putting the pedal to the metal and moving forward as fast as they can, just like Michael said. And despite that, the same person, if you make this analogy and you say, hey, imagine someone that is driving in an open field and it's filled with fog and they are with a very potent car and they are putting the pedal to the metal. They are as fast as they can. Does it make sense? And everybody will say no. Everybody will say this person's crazy. This person can die. It's a state of desperation. It's a state of unconsciousness, of not measuring the possible consequences of those actions. And this is something very present in many people's lives that I observe and that I observed before only, and I still observe in some moments, the lack of measuring the consequences that are involved in our actions and just being like reactive and things like that. And the fog is just like that. Like suddenly something appears right in front of you and you react and try to avoid it and act like everything's okay. But it's not okay. And we need to bring this analogy to our lives and be mindful, exercise our consciousness, because it's a muscle, it's a skill that we need to exercise and develop. Exercise our consciousness to understand, how can I better drive my life? How can I get out of this fog? How can I not be a victim of things that suddenly will appear in my way and depend on reaction? Because Tony Robbins said, reaction is weaknesses and proactiveness is power.
Absolutely. And this is really a space where when things get foggy, it's time to slow down. It's literally. And that fog may actually be our thought processes in our head. That fog may be the sluggishness we feel in our body. It may be looking at our bank account and seeing not a lot of money come in. So all of those are times whenever it's an opportunity for us to slow down and check the landscape so that we know where we're going and maybe find different tools to get through that fog. Sometimes we can wait until the fog lifts, depending on the situation that we're in, and it may be an anomaly for right now. I can certainly tell you that if we're actually going as fast as we can through the fog, we may get out of it quicker. But what if we're following that cloud? What if we're going as fast as the cloud is that's creating that fog and we're keeping up with the fog instead of slowing down enough to let it pass by? Or get out fog lights or use radar or find other tools that helps us get there. So this is really what coaching is about. This is what things like the 3 most important questions or the Lifebook Process or CPRs or any of these other tools that we're talking about is ways to see the landscape before we get there. Check the map, check the satellite pictures, check the current boots on the ground. What does that really look like versus what we think it should look like? That's what a lot of these tools are, and why we're bringing them here in the podcast is these are ways to reimagine your vision based on boots on the ground. And it's as much about formulating this as well as determining what your vision is for your life, not what someone else's vision is for your life, because they're not living your life for you. And I very much, this idea of self-actualization is really important to me. It's something I didn't do. I was not even considering 10 years ago. I dabbled a little bit 20 years ago and fell off the planet for a little while and was completely unconscious. And there's events that have now led me to wanting to live a more fulfilled life now. And I want to live into this and be more productive, be producing more in one direction. I was having a conversation last night of the idea of, if we're going to be working on a team with someone, as an example, is that if all of you are here and everybody's moving in opposite directions, you're not going anywhere. You're just eventually running in circles around each other. But what if everybody on your team, if that team is your family, if that's something you're doing at work, if it's your church or your community, what if all of you are heading in the same direction? What if all of us were actually setting a vision, having someone who is that leader that can help define a vision and enroll people in order to accomplish it, because it serves everyone's best interest that's part of that team? And that's where vision for the future is really important. Consequences of not doing that, however, is you have everyone on a team running in opposite directions. Now imagine that you're playing tug of war with all those people. You put a rope to the back of all those people in a ring in the middle. All of them are running in opposite directions. You're going to keep them where they're at because you're bound to this place that everybody's pulling in opposite directions. Versus if you even get your own thoughts, let alone the people that are on your team heading in the same direction, imagine how much further you can go rather than having that tug of war in your head or the tug of war with your team or your family. This is the importance to me, and the power of having a vision and setting up steps to live towards it.
You mentioned the fog, Michael, and the fog is very much the unknown. And the problem is, and there is always unknown, there is always fog. Like you said, when we are inside the fog, let's slow down. And yes, like it's uncharted territory. So we must slow down. We must recognize the territory, become familiar with it, learn the challenges, learn the best routes. Because just like you said, sometimes we are not on the best route. The challenge I see is that culturally, we don't have, like I mentioned this sometimes, we don't have a baseline culture that help us to achieve success, help us to have a highly productive life, help us to reach our goals and to have discipline and all those things that are so necessary. And that are not many things, because if you go look for books, like the best books on personal development, you will see many messages being repeated. If you look for the 7 habits of highly effective people, it's just 7. So it's not much. There is not much to learn that is actually transformative. But the thing is that, why do we call it transformative? Because we grow without those things. We don't have a culture to teach us. We don't learn it on school. We don't learn it on college. We don't learn it on work. We don't learn it with our family unless we are in a very specific culture scape where our family someone had the trouble to learn that and understood, had the didactics to pass it forward to their family. Because many parents, they do learn this information, but perhaps they came from such a different background that they want to give such a different life for their kids that they don't teach this to them. They just provide, and they don't fend for themselves. They don't learn those things that allow them to transform their lives. And we should not be calling those things transformative. We should just have this in our culture. The thing is that not having this in our culture, we shrink so much the comfort zone. We shrink so much our average comfort zone that everything is uncharted territory. Everything is unknown. Everything is inside the fog.
What you're alluding to is this. I don't remember who I was having the conversation with recently, but it's that idea of learning it so that you can apply it in your life is one level of learning. And at some point it becomes intrinsic. It's something that is just part of you. But having the skills to then take that wisdom that you've learned for yourself and take it to someone else, that didactic perspective on it. Not everybody has those skills too. So it's why there were shamans in communities. There are chieftains or leaders, because they are the ones who have the skill to see the vision. Shamans, on the other hand, is cultural wisdom, and they have the skills to bring that to the community so that they can learn that. And it is a skill, and I think that some people certainly are more gifted at it than others. And but what I perceive as so many people, including me for quite a long time, was working on getting through the day-to-day, not playing the chess game one step at a time, because they don't see the 5 steps down the way, because they haven't slowed down enough in order to see what the next possible moves are. They're playing speed chess, they don't have the skills yet to do it. So I think that there's very much that idea of it's one of the learning styles that I've heard mentioned is, if you're going to learn something, go into it with the mindset that you're going to teach it to someone else, because you learn a lot deeper. You learn about the mechanics, you learn about how it was taught, so you can then pass that on to the next person. And that's one reason why I'm really passionate about this idea of having a vision for your life, a purpose, and why you want to get it, and then moving that forward in your life, because I know how much impact it's made on me, that I want to be able to bring that to other people so they can learn to do the same thing. Because this idea of living unintentionally, living drifting, the idea of living reactive all the time, it causes, I perceive that as being the causes of things like anxiety, worry, and depression, being some of the underlying things of you don't know what's next. And I'm seeing this in my coaching practice too, is you give space for things. If you schedule things out in your day, you know what to expect. But if your whole calendar is open, if your whole life is open, you have no idea where you're going, there's no set path, there's no next step, there's no next process that we're going to go to. And instead of, this is where I'm going, here's the steps I'm going to get there, I'm going to start heading towards that first step, there's less worry and anxiety and concern for me in working in that model. That's what works for me. May not work for everyone, but that certainly have helped me keep moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and anxiety for me, my experience is pretty much like an overwhelming feeling that you don't know what to do with, like situations where you don't know what to do, where to go, how to react, and then these feelings overwhelm and they get you stuck. And yeah, it's not a good feeling, not very good, and something very common these days. A lot of people do have anxiety. Yeah, and about the shamans, the sages, the guides, I do think that we need those people in our society. We need to have a space in our culture for them. And we need to recognize those people, the value that they have. Like you said, not everybody came to teach. Not everybody has the tools necessary to communicate ideas. I see myself as someone very good to communicate ideas. I believe I can deconstruct a thought very well and then communicate it to people. This is not something that I just put in my head. It's like very many situations. There were many situations in which people recognize that on me. And even someone on the Mind Valley community say, hey, you are very good into putting the abstract, like giving sense to abstract things, to intangible things, and talking to about them as they were tangible. And that is very nice. So I see myself as this philosopher, as this person that we can talk and we can exchange information. I can understand where you came coming from and clarify them. And we need those people because today we don't have those people in society anymore. Like we had Aristotle, we had Socrates, we had Nietzsche, and I'm not comparing myself to this guy. I'm just saying that I'm doing the same thing. They were like masters on what they do. But those are the people that I know. I don't know other names to quote here. That's the point that I want to say. But the thing is, we need those guys because like Nietzsche was saying exactly what I was saying. We need to establish culture. The way to change society, the way to fix society's problems is through culture. is through plays in the theater, histories in the cinema. I don't know if, I don't think there were cinema in that time, but we have cinema today, like comic books and music, Michael. People repeat what is being sung into music. I hear around me the people, they say some sort of catchphrases that came from music, because music, culture teaches, philosophy teaches, conversation teaches, and we need to go back to that and establish the parameters for people to achieve success. We need to recognize the sages. And unfortunately, Michael, going a little bit further on this tangent, but it's cool for us to talk about that. By the way, if you enjoy those conversations that we are having here, if you like this type of conversation that we are having now, and you want to see more content like this, hit the like button, subscribe, activate the bell button. This is extremely necessary for us to grow and continue doing this work. And it's such a simple thing. Give us this strength, this energy. And unfortunately, Michael, those people that are in those positions as sages, as guides, they are often corrupt. They are often self-motivated. They are sometimes religious leaders that are taking advantage of their community to build their own vision. They are scammers online that are feeding people with what they want to hear and using manipulative marketing strategies, which should not be used for this purpose. They are good tactics, but the people that have ill intention, they might get those tactics and use them to manipulate people, because buying is an emotional process. Unfortunately, we cannot give good reason for people and expect them to buy. Usually people buy through emotion. So unfortunately, most of the people that are recognizing those spaces as teachers, as gurus, as wise people, the guides, the sages, they are after the last penny that we have in our pocket. And that is just so sad. And it is a cultural manifestation of the get quick rich scheme, of the shortcut, of the tip, of the tell me the secret formula.
Absolutely. And here's the thing that I've learned through the whole Lifebook process is there is no one formula, there's no one equation that's universal across all people. You've got to find what that is for you. There's so many words in the communications that we do that have just a slightly different meaning for people. If it's love or hope or success, each of those means something different to each person. So it is really a matter of the vision for how I want to live my life does include some of the people that I'm spending time with. But my vision is not for them to be a certain way. It's for my vision is actually how I'm going to show up with them, because that's what I can control. I can control my reactions. I can control what I say. I can control what I do. But it really, taking it a step back, is so many people don't do the work to figure out what that vision is. What is the kind of experiences you want to have? What is the knowledge you want to be bringing in? What is the filter by which you're going to say this is in and this is out? And that's where doing some of this deeper vision work is really important. And it's not just meditation can help get you there. That's actually all keeping it in here and in your body and in your soul and discovering what that is. At some point, it's got to come out of here and onto paper or into the computer, is externalizing it so you can inspect it. I know that's a very masculine way to approach it, but that's what I found to be the most effective for me. Is I've got all these ideas of what I want to do, but let's put it on the outside. Let's pick it up. Let's move it around. Like Tony Stark in the Marvel movies. It's okay. Let's take this apart and look at it, and then we can put it back together. Let's see what's making this tick. What is that? If I pull it apart, what is the core of what I want? And is the approach that I'm taking right now the only way to get there? And sometimes there is only a few ways to get there. But that process of taking it apart is where I feel the role of a coach or a therapist or a mentor can really apply some leverage. Is they can help you deconstruct it, like you mentioned, and get it down and distill it down to what is that piece in the middle that's the power source, that is the power core here. And that used to be our shamans and our sages and our witch doctors and our mystics and our religious leaders who seem to be able to look at things from that perspective. And less so, those people are trusted because of some of the bad things that have happened in those institutions. So where do we then find people that we trust? Where can we find people who are doing it for the betterment of both people rather than just for themselves? So I really think that it's important that even what you started that off with saying is that what's the secret formula? And so many people are actually looking for that formula out there in the world that somebody else is doing or that another book is written about. That's why for me is taking that I've discerned is appropriate for me to do and putting it out so I can inspect it, but it's coming from here. It's coming from inside of me. It is my journey that I'm on. I'm not on Bruno's journey. I'm not on Jenny's journey. I'm on mine. And the tools that work for me, the emotions that come up for me, the subjective experience for me is going to be different than the subjective experience for you. So it's really important to get to a place where you can discover what that is. I wouldn't even say that it is creating it. It's discovering it. It's unfolding all the layers of crap that's on top of what really is what our spirit, our whole self, are the full aspect of us is aiming to do, and unfolding and taking off and digging out that so we can figure out what that piece is underneath.
I know we talked about some tools of visualization in the past. We're gonna link the episode, like we have this episode on tools of visualization. It talks about planning, strategic planning, and how to manage a project. So tools that can help you execute things, get things from our head into reality. But how what are the tools that you would say that are best to give people the energy and the fulfillment and find this purpose related to life vision?
So I think there's a couple of key things that can help get you there. Some of the pieces that I've used to get there, the Lifebook process and the framework for that has been a big one to help discover what the vision is for my life and why I want it. So that's one big one. And it's combined with other things though. So for me, that's one tool that I've used to lever in that. But even this idea of finding what your purpose is, discovering what that is, and then a vision go with it. Also, I know I didn't find it on my own. I needed outside help. I had someone else who asked me questions to get me to a place where I understood that. And then peeling back the layers of, well, why do you want that? And then pull that apart to find what those words were that resonated for me. I also think working with a coach can help you with that. Working with a spiritual leader that you trust can also work for that, if that is the path that you have community around. I think that's where you can get some external assistance and support. But then I feel like I also need to go into this space as well of mindfulness and meditation. Is let's take that step back and see the whole picture. And the slowing down is things like meditation. It is things like being mindful about the choices I'm making and why I'm making them. And maybe attaching then emotions to the actions that I'm doing, or maybe even recording what emotions come up whenever I'm doing certain things, which then helps us lay out what the recipe is to get to that emotion later. And really being aware, almost a third person perspective of looking at, I feel on fire, I feel energized, I feel motivated, I'm drawn to this thing when I'm doing it. But you got to take that step back to see it. And then I can then see the thread that actually is connecting this action to this action to help me discern and discover what that vision is for my life. And working with a coach is whenever I can see that if I'm on the track that I'm on now, this is where I'm going to get. If I don't have a coach, and with a coach who can see from the outside perspective, they can say, before I hit the boulder driving through the field in the fog, turn left now, that I can then avoid that potential catastrophic event because someone else is actually seeing the satellite view with infrared and they can see the rock for you. But I'm still checking in on, okay, that sounds right. That sounds okay. That resonates. That's uncomfortable. Yes, but it feels right versus that's wrong. And I've got to test that here. I've got to actually test that with myself, my own guidance system of, yes, that's the right thing to do. And then listen to that guidance, which I think we've gotten so much into a habit, and I know I certainly did, of you don't know what you're talking about, that little voice that says, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. And I pushed that voice down. I pushed it away. You don't know what you're talking about. And then run into the boulder because I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't actually slowing down. And in doing so, it's now a matter of finding the way to get back on the road. How do I change out the tire in my car now that it's busted and sitting on in the middle of the field? I don't have the tools to fix it.
Sometimes it's necessary to have a hard stop. Like I spend a little bit of time more than necessary to make the revision on my bike, like the maintenance on my motorbike. It's like a scooter. And I was in this, I went to the mechanic and I was like, hey, I need to come here, but I'm a little bit tight on money. So I don't know if I'll come soon. Like, I know that I have to come. I was just looking for a new mechanic because the older one, it was suspicious. And unfortunately, and I had a problem there. And then this guy say, yeah, but I say, but I have to stop and do it. I say something like that. And then he say, yeah, you will either stop and do it or you will be stopped to do it. And I was like, that's a cool way. This guy has experience with that for sure. He probably had a lot of people that were stopped to do it. They didn't want to do the maintenance, and then they had a hard stop. Oh, you gotta go there now, like no choice. And I like, okay.
There's someone that I know who works in a manufacturing site, and they stopped doing the first and doing the second instead. Is let's not do the preventative maintenance. Let's wait till it breaks. And you would think that you would save money by doing that, but catastrophic failures are really expensive.
Yeah, because when the system collapses, it collapsed. When the system collapses to the point that you can't use it anymore, it has collapsed. So it's not good. And the maintenance, when the system needs maintenance, it is still working. So there might be a piece there that is wrong, but it's still working. And if the system gets to the point of stopping, it's because several things are wrong. I like when you say, Michael, that the Lifebook process, for example, when I ask you what are the tools, you mentioned Lifebook, you mentioned coach, you mentioned like meditation and other things. But I like when you say that the Lifebook process is a discovery process. It is a conversation. It uncovers some things. It peels back, like it peels the things that are in front of our vision. And it's not like someone will get there and will tell you the magic purpose of your life, of our lives. Doesn't happen. I also had help. I had help of Keith Ferrazzi to discover my purpose in life. It's not like I didn't knew before. It was there. It was just that the exercises that he did helped me understand what was there, because I didn't have a grasp on it. I didn't have a consciousness of it. And that's the point. Like we go back, we mentioned the same things as I said before. There are not many things that are important. So we repeat ourselves because repeating is important. The important things should be repeated to record them in our minds, because our minds physically records information. It's neural pathworks that are created. That's why the young child learns so fast, because they are growing and now these networks are being created easily. But there's not so many important things. And this idea of finding out your purpose, That's why some people like Vishen Lakiani say your purpose chooses you because it's already there. Our experiences in life guide us towards it. Why do I want to qualify marginalized people for better opportunities? Because I feel marginalized myself. I wish I had better opportunities. I feel like I was this brilliant person that was just born in unproductive circumstances. So how do I overcome that? I overcome this challenge. And in learning how to overcome this challenge, I feel this necessity of providing that not only to me, but to the community.
A little bit of a technical glitch here. Seems we've lost Bruno in Brazil. Yes, I do agree with you that in many ways our purpose finds us. And our vision is, what is it going to look like when we are acting on our purpose, when we are moving towards creating that vision for our life in the world. And every little bit is part of that process. There is going to be those things
Oh,
that you, and the things that are going to be the effects of what you do. And it's one of the things that I'm learning right now in the book by Alan Watts is we seem to consider that the cause and the effect are two separate things, but they're not. They're the same thing. It's like saying that the tail and the head of a cat are separate things. But if you separate them from each other, the cat dies and no longer is a cat. So it's a matter of being mindful that when I act like this is going to be the outcome, one triggers the next. And vision's a good place to start with that. Welcome back, Bruno.
thank you, Michael. So we understand that sometimes the person that is in this journey of discovering, of unpeeling, of finding their own purpose, they might indeed need a process. Like, guys, there is a process. That's what I believe people sometimes don't understand. I didn't knew that before. I didn't knew that there were processes to help. There were people like the mechanic guy. He had a phrase there like either you stop to do it or you are stopped to do it because he's familiar with that. There are people that are they helped so many people to go through this journey, finding out their own purpose in life, that they developed a process, they mapped the territory. Those words are not there in vain. It is a path, and someone has the map. And sometimes we can, in the past, it was go to the Himalayas, and find Shangri-La, and they're like Doctor Strange. There will be a house, and you will be find the master. And people went into these spiritual journeys. They went to the ashrams in India and things like that. Today we have the internet. We just need to find the right people. But that is a process. There is a map. There is a sage, a wise person, a guide, a shaman. And the Lifebook Process, for example, related to life vision, it is the best tool I have encountered. There is the 3MIQ, which is a much simpler process. The 3MIQ was transformative to me, Michael. Really, it was transformative because it just helped me so much to visualize what I wanted to experience in life and how I could grow in order to get there. And the final point of putting there the community and how this growth will benefit the community. This is a killer blow for your life vision because we forget sometimes that we are this collective organism and we are this single cell from the body of our mother that was fecundated, that was seeded, I don't know. And then it started to develop in this being that we have here. So we have our life, we have our purposes, we have our objectives and our experiences and all the individual self, our inner representation of the world. But we are also this bigger organism of humanity, and we are a single cell in this bigger organism, and this organism wants to survive. We don't understand that, we don't see it, but the same way our subconscious mind works, and there are a lot of things working there, this organism, it wants to survive. So when we put an objective and we say how this objective, we make this question, how will this object benefit the collective being? And we start to visualize the other people that are in our lives, particularly our family, our loved ones. And that's why exercising consciousness about love for other people and other beings, not only humans, but the entire ecosystem. We are as well part of the ecosystem, which is a live organism. When we put that objective, it gives us so much more energy, so much more fuel to move towards it. And just like you said, Michael, the Lifebook process is a way of actually discovering others. It's a much deeper dive that we go into the consciousness and the understanding of what motivates us. It's like creating a big vision board, a complex vision board. And not only creating the vision board, but creating the process to get there, discovering the process to get there. I really like those tools. And I think that related to life vision, those two tools are like the top two on my list.
So it's funny because you mentioned a bunch of different terms for who is out there who can help people through this process. I personally like using the term life vision outfitter because that's the role that I want to play, that I have gone down this path
It's
of using the
amazing, by the way. I love it.
And I'm not a Sherpa. I don't live in the Himalayas. I'm not in that culture. I can't use that term. So I've had to figure out how do I define myself? What is my identity in this space as a coach? So for me, Life Vision Outfitter fits because I have been down some of those paths and I can tell you where some of the pitfalls are, and I can hopefully outfit you and prepare you and ensure that you have the right resources in order to accomplish the goals that you're looking to go for. And I had to really play around with those words. What does that mean? Does outfitter work? Most of the time people think is someone who's going to put clothes on you. But in this world, this experience that we call life, clothes is one aspect of that outfitting. What other tools are you bringing? Is it hammers? Is it crampons? What are the other pieces we're doing for this? And for me, some of those things are the three most important questions, the 3MIQ process. Sometimes it is a core value meditation to get you to a point where you've picked out what your core values are. And that's kind of part of my process. And Lifebook is one of those tools as well to get the bigger picture of what is the clearest vision of your life that you want to do. And then once we have that, not only what's the plan, but what are the action steps that are going to get you there and holding you accountable to it. And some of this accountability comes personally, but if I tell someone, if I make the commitment, which we talked about early on in our podcast episodes, if I make the commitment to someone else, I will have this done by this time doing this action, it's another extrinsic motivator. It's an external motivator to ensure that I get that done, which then reinforces my internal motivation to get it done as well. So it's hedging our bets on whether we're going to accomplish that next step to get to the next layer in our life. This podcast is one of those things that is one of those motivators for me to get my voice out there, to hopefully connect with people who feel the same way about living through their lives, but they maybe are missing a little step. They're missing part of the map that they need help with. And those are the people that I want to talk with. And hopefully we can find a place where it's a win-win, where it serves you and serves me at the same time. I was asked earlier today what is the core motivation around my coaching business? And I had to go back to when I was on a men's team, where the purpose, the mission of that team was to support men to be successful in all areas of their lives. And it's one thing that I had forgotten about until I found paperwork that reminded me of that. And this isn't to say for me that I only want to see men succeed. In that particular context, it was only men on a men's team. But I truly do want to see people be successful in all areas of their life, because I don't feel, just like they talk about in the Lifebook process, that having a whole bunch of money in my bank account but hating my job is a good place to be for me. Similarly, if I actually have an amazing spiritual practice, but I treat my life partner like crap, I don't see that being a good place either. So I do want to see all the areas of my life be something that I'm striving towards being a better version of where I am now, discovering what that better version is, so I can then elevate my life to that level and then start taking actions in order to accomplish it. Because the balance in all those things, I saw an infographic a couple weeks ago about what we think balance in our life is, and it's actually home and work on a simple teeter-totter. But what balance really looks like, and it looks like this huge Rubinstein machine with balancing this and that and a whole bunch of different heavy-weighted things, and it looks like a mess. That really is what our life can be, unless you have a clear vision for what you want your life to be. You're taking action that's going to have the most impact on the most categories of your life to move your life to the level of elevated vision that you want. And that's why this is important to me.
And I love this term of life vision outfitter. I didn't understand very well at the beginning. I was like, seemed like you were inventing things, and I don't like, I mentioned this before, when businesses, they invent things, words that are not the definition of the thing. Because it was a book, I believe it was from Aristotle, that said, like, he begins the book talking about the mistake that it is to use the wrong words, use a word to say something that is not the definition of the word. And I didn't understood that in the beginning. I was like I was expecting more from him. First thing I read from the guys, hey, here's the importance of using the definition, the proper words with the definition. And this is one of those examples where the person that is speaking, they have hidden reasons to say that we are just not aware, and we need to trust them and understand that, okay, let's do this. Let's do like Aristotle said. And this, then I did the Be Extraordinary quest, where we learned the importance of words. And words are so important. Like the words, they are symbols that might empower us or limit us. And when I went to see the definition of outfitter, I was like, that is perfect for what Michael wishes to say. Because the outfitter is the person that provides you with the tools necessary to complete a journey. And that is just poetic, Michael. Thank you for using that term. Because that's exactly what we were talking about. There are tools out there, there are maps, there are tools like processes, methodologies, exercises, rituals that we can make, we can go through, that will greatly impact our lives. If you do the 3MIQ, your life will be different. Every time you go back there and you review it, you will change your life. If we do the Lifebook process, our life will be different. And it's not for the worst, it's for the better. It's for a place of more consciousness. It's for a place of more power. It's for a place of more understanding, and thus more control and more decision for what we can do in our lives. It's from a place of quiet desperation, which is where the unconscious person that is drifting usually is, feeling desperate. The anxiety, it's quiet desperation. We are quite right there. And then sometimes poof, bursts out that desperation. Sometimes we don't display it to people. Sometimes it just bursts out, and you see someone sitting in a bench and that person is having a breakdown. And it's from this place to a place of more understanding, more consciousness, more empowerment, more intention and fulfillment and purpose on their lives. So I love this term, Michael, and it's very good that you are using it. It has the Bruno improvement, not that it matters much.
I'm glad to have your seal of
does.
approval. And this is one of the things too that I like about the Lifebook process is, yes, it is doing that deep vision work, figuring out what you want and why you want it, your beliefs around it, and the strategy you're going to use to create it. But then there's also then the execution side of things for it. It is the breaking it down into smaller digestible chunks and taking action on an everyday, week, month basis to get it. But there's also this other piece of it too, which, as we've mentioned before, is I like to wear a kilt. I very much like the Scottish culture. So what I'm going to refer to back now is the bagpipes, which I don't play, but the bagpipes specifically have, when you're playing it, there is the part that you play the melody on, but there's also always the drone, that steady rhythm that's actually playing in the background. That is the bass line by which the melody is played on top of. That is one of the beauties that I find in listening to bagpipe music. That drone, when it comes to this live vision work, is what are your daily habits that you're doing to maintain all the areas of your life? What is those things that if you do daily, it will at bare minimum maintain the areas that you want to grow in? So you have then the opportunity to do a deep dive, so you can actually go in and actually do huge growth work in one area of your life that you want to see the biggest movement. What are those big rocks, as they talk about, those large goals, those moonshots that you want to make sure that you actually make that huge impact in your life and possibly the world. But this drone is also necessary. This thing that you're doing on a daily basis that's maintaining your health, is maintaining your relationships, is maintaining your career, and is maintaining your environment around you, because those are necessary. I could probably easily work 90 or 100 hours a week and produce a whole bunch of things. But then what happens to my relationship with my partner? What happens to the state of my home? It's going to be a mess if I'm actually eating only fast food because I don't have enough time to slow down and actually cook a healthy meal. What's going to happen to my health? So both of these factors of the melody, which is the big rocks, those big movements, those major shifts that we're making, also need to be backed up with those regular daily habits. If that's a morning routine, if that's an evening routine, something that is the steady static things that you look to accomplish every day. I think that
And
maintaining both is necessary.
And I believe, Michael, that sometimes we say, hey, a coach is very important. And people that are hearing is, oh, those guys, they are selling coaching services. So of course they are telling that coaching is very important. But imagine you discovering all those processes, all those tools alone. I did that, guys. I was 8 years in personal development. Like when I found out, I mentioned in the beginning of this episode that how I felt, and it was terrible. Oh, okay. So I mentioned as I have mentioned in the past on the podcast, I believe I mentioned this on the past. After, like Michael asked me 10 years ago, Bruno, where you were. Year after that moment, I was like done with life. I was like, I spent an entire month inside my bedroom that I went out sometimes to take a bath and to pick up food in the kitchen. And I wasn't talking with my family. I was like, I was just there. And if my mother was not alive, I would definitely have killed myself. I got to the point of planning, but during planning, I realized that, you know what? My mother will find me, and I visualized the desperation that she would feel. And I couldn't do that to her. And coincidentally, after that, immediately after that depression, the day I remember how it was, Michael. I got out of the bedroom. I wasn't going out there. I just got out, and there was a window in the room in front of the bedroom door. And I went to this window. The sun was shining there. It was a higher floor. We lived in an apartment. And I was looking out there, and I started thinking how life was messed up and how everything I did failed. And I had just moved in with that same girl from the relationship, and it was a total wreck. And I was like, I was back into my mother's house a month there, and I was like, why everything that I try to do just goes wrong? And then this answer came, because everything that we question ourselves, our mind will answer. And it was like, because you didn't do anything to conquer nothing. You didn't conquer anything. You didn't deserve anything. Everything that you did, like everything that you put in your house was your mother that gave you. And you just don't deserve it. You didn't do anything to deserve it. And then I decided to take a shower, go to see my mother on her salon. She's a hairdresser. And there was this woman there, Naya, her name. Thankful for Naya changed my life. And if it wasn't for her, I don't know if I would be here today, because life was very painful. Life was very painful, Michael. I used to lay down on my bed and just feel the hurt of all experiences that I had that really hurt me. And people were very mean to me. Like people would throw beer on me when I go out on the street. I was going on my to the square where people get together. And then people would just pass on the car, going to the same place. People that I knew, Michael. They would pass on the car and they had a beer cup on their hand. They would just, several times that happened, they would just throw that beer on me. And I was there and I met Naya, and Naya called me to a network marketing opportunity. And that's why I like so much network marketing. I know I didn't have success in network marketing, but if it wasn't the culture there, I wouldn't have found out about personal development. I wouldn't know, I would have no idea that I could improve myself and learn new things and develop skills and develop a growth mindset. So that moment changed my life. And I didn't have to an orientation. I wasn't good with people, so I didn't listen very much to the leaders. And that was cool because I was rebel. So I went out there and didn't become a follower. I became a student because I was eager to change my life. And I find out what works. Like I understand a bit more now today. And now I feel ready. Now, Michael, 8 years later, like 8 to 9 years later, I feel ready. Like I am doing things and I am at this moment where I do have a vision. I do have a plan. The plan goes very far away, and I have a step-by-step ladder that I'm going through, and this vision just draws me. And I was talking with a friend of mine there. I know I'm going too long on this, but it's important, this one. Like I was talking to a friend of my partner, he is my business partner. And I was like, he was like mentioning, giving to understand that I was like rushing things. And I was like, dude, here's the thing. Every moment that we have is sacred. And this moment is sacred because we have the now, like the Daddy Yogi thing about the now. We have the now. Everything happens on the now. If I go fix my bike tomorrow, it will be on the now. It can't be tomorrow. It will be now. And this moment that we have now, it is sacred because right now I can either just exist and lay down my bed and suffer, or I can become a transformative force in the world. When I talk to you, I'm transforming the world. And a vision that you communicate to others and that you rally people towards it. This is the moment where we create emergence, where we create something that is much bigger than us and much more powerful than the sum of the things. But every moment we have is sacred. And when you have your vision clear, when you understand it well enough, and when you have the tools, and when you have support, that even if you don't know what to do, someone is there to support you and to guide you and to help you find out. That person might not know the answer, but to help you find out. When you have this vision ready, that's the moment where you just filled with energy, and that thing, that vision just pulls you towards it because you understand that this moment that I'm living is a transformative moment. This is the moment where I'm building my vision into reality, and you just know what to do. I know I use just know what to do in the end, but it is what happens. You might not just know now, but when you work on this, like we are talking right here, and using these tools and these processes, there will become a moment where the next step is clear and you just know what to do.
That's actually the beautiful thing that I like about this idea of visioneering, of engineering what your life is going to look like is. And I know that Jack Canfield has talked about this, as well as most coaches and people who are looking to help people better their lives. And it sounds at first time that you hear it, it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo, that it's too woo woo. And that, but we found that, at least what I've discovered, is that there's some science to back some of this stuff up. If I set the intention and I say to myself, this is where I'm going to be, this is where I'm heading, our brain, then you just programmed it to fix a problem, and it then goes and finds all the solutions to the problem. Because that 10% of executive functioning, the choices that we make in that conscious mind, is only the control panel for setting what the rest of the machine is going to go do, of finding the solutions and looking through the archives to figure out what worked in the past and combining ideas together to present them as potential solutions. So having the plan of where you're going to go, or having the destination defined, then allows us to then start seeing, experiencing the possibilities and the things that are already ready available in order to get there. I think that in essence is what some people call the law of attraction. Other people call the reticular activating system. And other people say it's God answering my prayers. And it's a matter of then using the words that work for you. I still think it's the same underlying technology that's being used. We may just not know the exact mechanics by which it's actually being activated.
And it doesn't matter if you are like, oh, it's God answering my prayers. It doesn't matter. It will happen. And I believe it's our subconscious mind. Praying is a very good process. Praying is some sort of meditation. It's a meditation where we do some suggestion to ourselves, where we make some proper questions, some interesting questions, like, and then we ask for answers, Michael, and then our mind answers it. And some people might say it is God, and it looks like God, looks like magic, looks like whatever you want to say. I believe it's technology, and it's the best technology that is out there. It's organic, and that might lead us into talking like, are we created by, engineered by other alien races? Are we in a simulation? Are we in this and that? Oh, so many questions will come up. But the organisms that we see here on Earth, they do look to me like technology. Very, very advanced, like very impressive technology. And we are part of it. We are this thing, this collective, and we just don't understand it. That's what I want to say. We just don't understand this technology. But thank God, we don't need to fully understand it to benefit from it. And some people, they might be much deeper into this understanding, and they create processes, methodologies, interfaces that we can use with much little knowledge. The barrier to use them becomes much little. You don't need to understand everything that John and Missy Butcher understood in order to create the Lifebook process. You don't need to have this experience. You don't need to have the experience that Vishen Lakhiani had in order to create the 3MIQ, the 3 most important questions. They prepared a process, a ritual, an event that will help us go through it, and thus we use it as an interface that can help us have the benefit with less knowledge, less experience, less understanding even of why that works. And that's why faith is so important. I do believe that religion kind of distorted faith into associating it with God, but faith for me personally has nothing to do with God. Faith has to do with believing, believing something that is not attainable yet, believing that something that is not attainable yet, not material yet, or that you don't have a direct experience with yet, is real and is attainable. It is reachable for you, to you.
As you're talking about this, as far as like the user interfaces to something we don't quite understand anymore, it reminds me of a couple of book series that I read when I was a teenager. One was the Soul Writer series by Jack L. Chalker, who talks about the ideas of magic on a planet. And as you get into the storyline, it explains why any of it's possible. The other was actually the Dragon Riders of Pern. Similarly, this idea of being back in a feudalistic society and wondering why things came about. It's us creating our own fables, our own origin stories, our own perspective for this idea of how do we access this technology, whatever it is, in order to live the best version of our life. And I'm hoping that I can be one of the UI designers the user interface designers, that can make it easier for some people, because I have experienced some things as successes and failures, and some things that are really great and some things are really horrible. So let's actually tweak the user interface for people who may not have the time, energy, or space or skills to go through some of that more challenging work. They're going to have the skills and the endurance to go through their own challenges. Let's make some of that stretch a little bit easier so they can get to the next challenge, so they can overcome the next hill or mountain range. So if someone could actually say, if you start here, you can get over there by tomorrow, that is a shortcut for me to actually get across that mountain. If I say that got to watch at the top because it's icy up there, which tools to bring in order to overcome the ice, versus running into it and going, crap, what do I do now? You'll probably still get through it, but if you can get through it more efficiently, that's where I reframe things, is looking at what is the hurdle that you're up against. And maybe I've come up against that same barrier, that same problem, or had a similar experience. Maybe I can say, maybe you should try these two other things rather than the way that you're doing it. Is, to me, like saying there's ice at the top, make sure you're prepared for it, is reframing it a little bit. And then it's not a matter of you're going to fail because there's ice at the top. It's more, let's prepare you so that you can overcome that obstacle.
I think that there is a great hook here, Michael, for us to talk about the subconscious mind and the power of suggestion. We mentioned that a lot. And also in the tools of visualization video, we talked about a little bit about goals. I think that there is room for us to do an episode about goal setting, because it's a very important thing. And it is simple, but it might look so complex if we don't have experience with it. So it's very good to go through it. And also, don't forget, if we are going through our life vision, sometimes I take it for myself. We are so used to with struggle and with hard times that when we start to do some improvement, we forget to celebrate. So just by watching this episode, just by getting in touch with this information, perhaps this is the first time you get in touch with this information, that all this is possible, like I once did, and celebrate. If you just got to know something new, celebrate. If you just gave a step into the right direction and you feel like it's the right direction, celebrate, because it is so important. It's celebrating that renews our energy to understand, to give the message to the subconscious mind. We are on the right track. He gave the mission, they gave the mission, we heard it, we work on the background, and we provide answers, and it was worth it, because now we are celebrating. Yeah. Do you have anything to add for us to wrap up, Michael?
I think that I've really enjoyed this conversation. It is core to what I'm working on. Not what I'm trying to work on, not that I'm thinking of working on. It's what I'm in action in creating in the world, is people who are being more intentional, having a vision, taking steps to create it, and hopefully with the faith that I will be of service to people out there to help get them there. And if it is to a program, if it's to another video that's going to help get you there, if it's one of the coaching programs that we have, all of those are possibilities. And that's where I want to play, is in this area of possibilities, so that you can actually elevate your best on an everyday basis.
Thank you, Michael. And just like we just talked about faith, and this is something that you do not require faith to, because you do transform lives, you do help people. I have my life, some of the transformation that I have, a great deal of the transformation, some of the most impactful recently, I do own to you. And I'm pretty sure that many people on the Mind Valley community that I see, this is what I see. And in other spaces, they are having their lives transformed by you. You are helping people to elevate our best, everything that you do. Thank you
for joining us here on the Elevate Your Best podcast. My name is Michael Danklefs. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you next week.
Bye bye, guys.